Where the fuck is McClay?
Okay.
Oh wow, we're all out. We're doing it tonight.
Sounds rolling.
All right, folks. Bogcast, episode 41. Kirk, Nurmi.
Episode 41, Bogcast, Kirk, Nurmi. I don't know if you mind doing it to that camera.
To which camera?
Oh, that's one.
Okay. Bogcast, Kirk Nurmi.
Sweet thing. You just set it off to the side. I appreciate it.
And action.
Awesome. This is the Bogcast, episode 41. We are brought to you by Bang Salon. Come get all your hair needs, including cuts, natural colors, vivid colors, extensions, shampoo and styling, all under one roof at Bang Salon. Find and message Bang Salon on Instagram at Bang Salon at BANGDSALON. Use promo code
Bogcast.
for 20% off your first visit. So come on down and get banged by Jordan. But if you really try to bang her, I will fucking kill you. Cool.
Also, be sure to check us out on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes. Like and subscribe also. Please hit that bell. All right?
Sweet. We have a really, really exciting guest today. He's an author, a public speaker. He was the former lead defense attorney in the Jodi Arias trial for 6 years. But most importantly to me, he's a cancer survivor. And actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you first, man. First of all, how you doing, Kirk?
Good.
That's good, man.
Good to be here.
Yeah,
Fun to
man.
be here with you
I
guys.
really appreciate you taking the time to come down and talk to us, man. Obviously, we would love to talk to you about the case and stuff,
Yeah.
but cancer really hits home to all of us, actually. My mom passed away of cancer in 2009. Chris McClay here. Actually, if you want to explain the cancer that you had.
I had osteogenic sarcoma, which is a bone cancer. I had a 6-inch tumor in my right thigh bone.
Yeah, so he's a cancer survivor. And then between all of us, actually, we just lost a couple of friends in the last year to cancer and stuff. So I think your story is super inspiring, man. And so I was wondering, like, how you doing right now today?
Good. I mean, it's one day at a time. Cancer, I always say when I go on stage, is it gives you a look at your mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was a stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis, and that meant 6 rounds of chemotherapy and the surgeries to put in the power port and all those things. So it gave me a 6-month long look at my mortality. And certainly there were other issues because of the infamy that the Arias trial had brought on me, being a tiny bit of a public figure back in 2015. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot going on with that, and that really changed me moving forward.
Yeah, so like, where are you at today with the cancer?
Still in remission. I get
Yeah.
scans every 6 months or
Mm-hmm.
so just to make sure we're still there. And so I've been in remission since February of 2016, and so I'm happy that, and I'm always mindful of the other stories I hear of, like, your loved ones that haven't made it. So I feel very fortunate, and that time in the treatment room is never far from me.
Yeah.
Those memories are there. I've been on the Arizona Daily Mix with Danielle Williams. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but she's battling cancer right now too. And the first show I did was actually a benefit at the Comedy Spot for her to help her pay for her cancer treatment. So those things are never far from my mind, and in some ways rightfully so, because they keep me cognizant of how lucky I am to be here now and be experiencing some of the things in life that I am experiencing.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I've been, for a couple weeks now, maybe about a month and a half, I would actually say, we've been kind of watching your channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you guys check him out on YouTube. He has some amazing videos. You post regularly, and you can find it at Nurmi Unchained. Just search that on YouTube. You'll find him. Go to his website at unchainedlives.com, and you do some amazing little videos where you talk about what's going on with you and kind of like how to inspire others, I think. there's some things that you've talked about lately that I think really hit home with people in this room, and that's at some point you have to take control of your life just to be happy. And especially going through an event like the cancer and stuff, it really opens you up to realize, hey, whatever time I got here, I can't worry about that small shit. And you went through just as crazy as a thing before that with the case. Do you think the case brought on the cancer?
Yeah, I knew that right away. You know, cancer really entered my life in August of 2015. If you recall, Miss Arias was sentenced in April of 2015. And I had been on her case 5.5 years at that point. And with everything that transpired that we can get into later, I was just burnt out, exhausted. And I started to wonder, did I really want to practice law anymore, which was one of the first, real shocks to me, because I had worked so hard to get that law degree. I mean, it took me over a decade of for various reasons. But in August, I was hoping the zeal to practice law would return. In September, the kids come back to school, things start happening in terms of criminal defense world. And I hadn't found that zeal yet, but I hadn't found anything else that was really a passion of mine. And in August, when I was starting to think, okay, it's time, we got one more trip. I had taken about 3 months off, traveling different places. I was a baseball fan, so went to Cooperstown and Kansas City, the Negro League Hall of Fame. Just kind of took some time off with my wife. And then I noticed that a growth under my armpit, an inflamed lymph node. And, it doesn't take, I'm not a doctor, but you can go on Google and get some pretty good ideas. And that was a shock. But when I had that idea, I knew right away that it was linked to the stress of everything that I'd experienced since January 2nd, 2013, when I became identified as Jodi Arias' lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. And not only that, you had to go through not just one trial, 2 trials.
Yeah.
And hating it the whole time. I mean, not hating it the whole time. I shouldn't speak for you, but you said you got to a point where you didn't know if you wanted to practice law anymore. Well,
that was after the Arias trial, but there was a long series of events, I guess, going back in terms of, that day when I stood up, what a lot of people didn't know. And the short of it is, I was assigned the case when I was a public defender in 2009. And like most people in 2009, I was completely naive to who Jodi Arias was. And it's hard for some people to believe because her name's so infamous now.
Yeah.
But so I know at the time you got it in 2009, and she committed the murder in 2008. Was it just not as known at that time, like in the media?
Right.
I mean, it might have been mentioned, but kind of just as another murder in a sense.
Well, she had done a interview for CBS 48 Hours. She'd done a documentary. They interviewed her. She was arrested in the summer of 2008. She was interviewed actually in Wairika, California, Northern California. She was arrested in her hometown. She came down to Arizona. She was extradited to Arizona. She then gave a second interview with CBS 48 Hours. She had another attorney in 2008. That attorney conflicted off the case in 2009, and then it was assigned to me as a public defender.
And then when you got it, you had no idea who she even was at that time.
No, I had no idea.
Nor where it was going.
Yeah.
No, not initially. I mean, certainly as time went on, I started to get a tiny sense of where it was going, at least where she was going with the case, not in terms of where the media was going with the case.
Hey, really quick, how soon after you met her, though, did you know she was crazy as
That's
fuck?
exactly what I was going to say.
Let's put it this way.
Because I mean, you could. I'm just gonna be honest. You could just. You just look at a picture. I'm like, she looks crazy.
Well, one thing I say
one
thing I say in my book, and that's a dangerous question for me to touch. But one thing I say in my book is that when I talk about that second interview, the one she did in 2008 when she was already transferred to Arizona, no criminal defense attorney worth their salt would recommend their client to go do the interview. Because in this interview, she told a story about people breaking into the house, and, it became known as the ninja story. Like they broke in, they stabbed him, they were going to shoot her, but they spared her life, et cetera, right? So I knew that I had my hands full in the sense that whatever advice was given, she may not have had adequate counsel in Wairika when she did the first interview. But when she did the second, she had a very good, high-quality capital defense attorney who I know would have told her to keep her mouth shut, and she didn't do it. So what I had at first glance was at least a client that was going to act in defiance of their attorney's advice.
Yeah, which is a nightmare for any job, yet alone her.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, Chris, can we get his mic a little bit closer on him? Or
there you go.
Yeah, sorry. I guess you could do it.
Yeah, I got that far down.
You don't get paid for that hour, Chris.
Yeah. Too bad you couldn't have gotten lucky like those first two attorneys. Man, they dodged a bullet.
Well, I made efforts to get off. I was going to leave the public defender's office in fall of 2010, towards the holidays. I started thinking, I had 2 capital trials, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but they're at least 4 months long. And they're very grueling, and they're very emotionally grueling. There's no good cases, as it were. Some people worked there 10, 15 years and never did more than 1 trial. And I had done 2 in about 2 years. And I realized that this wasn't the life for me.
How long had you been a lawyer at that time?
I'd been a lawyer, 2009, it'd probably been about 8 years,
Oh, wow.
8 or 9 years, yeah. And so, I was just deciding I wanted to move away from the public defender's office. I wanted to go into private practice, maybe have a more sedate lifestyle,
Be your own boss.
lower level crimes, be my own boss, that sort of thing. And I was raised by my grandparents who grew up in the Depression. So they were very much a you don't know when your next meal's going to come from type of mentality that was instilled in me. And that also meant not leaving a good job if I had one.
Yeah.
And so in maybe logistically or quantitatively, the public defender's office was a good job in that it was a steady paycheck and it came with benefits, right? I didn't have to go out and get clients. Malpractice insurance, all that stuff.
You just felt safe where you were at.
Yeah.
And it was a good job, obviously.
Yeah. So I gave it a long thought, and then over the holidays when it's kind of slow, and I came in January of 2011 and resigned from the public defender's office with the expectation that I'd be leaving the Arias case behind me because I was starting to have an inkling of where at least her defense was going and that sort of thing, right?
At this time, was it a Media Circus at all?
No,
or?
not yet, because there were certainly grumblings, but the trial it never really got infused with the media till trial got closer, right? And at this time, trial wasn't very close. We were months away. We were probably 7 or 8 months away, but I was going to stay through February because she had an important hearing, and I felt duty bound to do that. And the public defender's office had already brought in replacement counsel, that sort of thing. And the judge then, through a series of events, and I respect her decision, the trial was about 6 months away, said, no, you have to keep the case, long and short. And there were many different times when I tried to get off the case before January 2nd, 2013, but ultimately those were all denied. And on January 2nd, 2013, I was duty-bound, in essence, to tell Miss Arias' story.
Yeah.
Is that normal for a judge to do that? Or is it usually they do let you get off of it? Or
Well, that's kind of hard to say in a capital case. There's probably no normal. But like I say, I respect the judge's decision, and she did what she thought was best. And I guess that's some attorney was going to have to do it, and I guess in essence I drew the short straw.
Yeah.
At what point did it start getting crazy where you were like, okay, this is going to be
when did you know? Like,
Yeah.
what day did you like, oh, okay, this is crazy?
Well, I don't know if there's a particular day. I mean, I remember before trial started, I received a call at my office from the British Broadcasting Company, and they wanted to do a documentary and follow me around. And this was like a couple months before the trial. And they literally wanted to follow me around in preparations and stuff like that. And that was certainly an inkling that it was going to get crazy. And I always knew that the media, through their lawyers, had, wanted access. They wanted to post cameras, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think anybody could have predicted that it became what it became.
Yeah.
You could say, okay, because, even now, Court TV's back in business. They're an online, media provider, and you've got a lot of other, companies, Oxygen's 24/7 true crime now.
Yeah.
Things like that. But there's a lot of trials. And there's a lot of trials that most of the world has never heard of. But this one, for whatever reason, was one that the entire world heard of, because they were live streaming it. I mean, when I stood up that day to announce myself as the counsel for the accused, it was being streamed all over the world.
Yeah, they were watching it at work. I remember there were guys literally watching it at work.
So one of my questions is, besides like the stress of dealing with Jodi herself, how did you deal with the stress of it being a media circus? Like, were you stressed out being known that every media was critiquing the way you were doing your job, and even like your peers? Were you nervous about that at all, or did you even think about that, or was that just not even on your mind at the time?
Well, my focus was geared towards what was going on in the courtroom, because that's all that I could control, right? I mean, I can't control what people are saying on social media about me or anything else. And there are people commenting and critiquing your performance, and it was kind of hard to escape in the sense that, like, I had satellite radio in my car, and so I could hear, Nancy Grace and others, talking about my performance, and you say peers. I would say that they're not really peers, because they were like real estate attorneys and stuff like that, commenting on the work of a capital.
Yes.
Well, I don't mean that. I don't mean
defense
commenting. I'm just saying,
In
like,
your office.
like people that in your world who are watching, obviously know about it and watching it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it was all consuming, to answer your question. Like, say you go home, you want to like a
you can't get away from it.
Normal trial, and then you're driving home. I remember driving back on the 202, thinking, oh man, and I know it's there, right? I know that if I just hit that one button, that I can listen to the testimony. And some days I did, and some days I didn't, right? And I would try to listen if I felt like I needed to hear something again, or to see how certain things were playing, that sort of thing.
Did anybody ever approach you on the street once it became a circus? And was there any weird situations where people, because she was hated as much as she was, Googled over. Yeah. She was completely hated. And did anybody ever approach you in public, or, say anything to you that was weird? Or
that when back then, I look a lot different. I had a shaved head. I'm 6'2". I got I'm weighed more than I do now, and so I was easily recognizable. So that was the other thing. I mean, we got to the point I was opening my mail with rubber gloves, because people were sending me. I did get some white powder in the mail.
What?
And people were sending me all kinds of weird porn and Mormon conspiracy theories and everything. Maybe you didn't hear the word weird in front of it.
That's cool. I'm saying that's cool. Still cool.
All right. Well, but so I mean, and people would come up to me, at the gym in the morning before, and make some smart ass comment, and going out to dinner with my wife or something, like I like to do, and it was just kind of that thing.
Did you still go say, like, fuck it, I'm still going out, or did it actually affect where, like, you might not go to dinner as much because of that was happening?
I think I dialed it back a bit. Part of it was exhaustion, and part of it was not wanting to deal with any of that stuff. Yeah,
because there's a lot of douches out there. And you don't want to get into confrontation.
Well, and a lot of people translate, unfortunately, in a country where we supposedly believe in the presumption of innocence, transfer the sins of the client onto the attorney.
Yeah.
It happened to Jose Baez. I'm sure it happens to a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, I did a show on the Oxygen network called In Defense of. And it was 4 infamous cases, myself, Jodi's case, and Ted Bundy's lawyer was involved, the guy who represented Timothy McVeigh, and a guy who represented someone at the Waco compound. And they talked about their stories, and it's very similar. I mean, the difference for me was that it was in the social media era, so people could vent online, and it could be more of a big deal. I gave a talk a long time ago. I talk about, OJ. Just think if OJ had an iPhone in the back and he could tweet, when he was in the back of the Bronco, right?
No,
I mean,
think
about what that would have been like, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
And so this was one of those things. But you curtail it back, and I still get recognized in public now and then, but the fervor's over.
Are you getting recognized more for the stuff you're doing now?
Sometimes, yeah. It just kind of depends, you know.
Well, what I like about what you're doing now is, in your words, you know, you said you got painted as a reality character, which is kind of true, and now you're getting to show the people who you really are. And I love like how your Twitter even says, I think it says something like currently having fun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's badass, man. And I think that's what life is all about. And, you know, obviously you're at the top of your game, you know, in your job and stuff. And you realized that wasn't making you happy anymore. And I feel like you found like what happiness is, especially with your public speaking now. And you're inspiring other people. And I think, a lot of people don't ever get a chance to find that. You know what I mean? I think it's very admirable that you're going out and talking. I'd like to actually talk about that for a minute, your public speaking.
Of course.
So.
And you know, this kind of got alluded to earlier. When I found out that I had the stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was 6 rounds of chemotherapy, I really did go to a dark place. You know, I wondered whether I was going to go in the chemo chair, knowing what that would mean. But I had to rebuild my life and my reputation and everything else. Because also remember, you know, during the trial, Miss Arias, well, the jury's literally deliberating her life or death, says I'm the one who created this defense that she proffered, right? Total lie. So that put a bigger target on me. She had threatened to ruin my career earlier, and she certainly made her efforts to do it. And so I'm like, do I really want to rebuild? I didn't want to practice law anymore. You know, I'd established this career. I was a nationally known lawyer, but in some ways, as high as I was, that was as low as I was too, right? And so I was starting to think about that. And then I started kind of going through the process of making sure that when I went in that chair that I wasn't going to live my remaining years the way I had my first 49. And one of those things was to make happiness my beacon. And making happiness my beacon made it a real easy choice when the state bar got on me for writing the book and wanting to suspend me. Instead of contesting that in court, because that was the next step we were at, I told my lawyer that I wanted out. I wanted to be voluntarily disbarred because I did not want to live that life. Because had I had a 6 months or a year suspension, that'd be over now. I wouldn't be here. I'd be stressed out, maybe working in my office on some other case.
Forced yourself to have to change.
I forced myself to cut the cord and say, okay, this is it. I want a new life, because I didn't want to, you know, I know so many lawyers, I see so many lawyers that are just running out the clock. I mean, I had a friend, he wasn't a lawyer, engineer, hated his job, running out the clock until he could retire. I
think that's most Americans.
He literally had one of those retirement clocks on his.
Yeah, you get after like 30 years, and it's worth like $100.
Yeah, no, but you know, count down to retirement. How many days?
I thought you were talking about the one that the work gives you.
No.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the clock, asshole.
But he had all these dreams and things he wanted to do. I mean, he was a veteran, just a great guy, and he went on a 6-month motorcycle ride. He was going to see all these national monuments with his buddies. And he got hit on the freeway and died like 2 months afterwards.
Yeah, we have it backwards. We, instead of doing those exciting things and creating experiences and memories at a young age, we work our lives away, thinking that, oh, we're going to retire and get to go do all those things. Well, at that time, if you're still alive, you're broken. You know, why not do it? I've talked about it before. I think they used to call it the Grand Tour, where back in like the Victorian times, the guys in Europe would go around, but you know, after they turned, you know, like mid-20s or something, and they would just tour Europe for 2 years, because that was the time to do it when you're young and you're vigorous and you can go have fun, right? And
just get experiences.
Yes.
But it doesn't even have to be something that grandiose. It can be just a matter of happy every day.
Yeah,
being
freeing
happy
yourself
every
here.
day. Freeing yourself here. Like one of the things that I share that seems to resonate with people, well, there's two things. One of them is have to versus get to.
Yep.
Right? You think about, oh, crap, I have to go to work today. I have to go to work today. If you just shift that to get to, you may hate your job, but if you just shift that to get to by thinking of all those things that job gives you, right? It feeds your family, whatever it is, and then use that as a jump-off point to a happier life. That's great. And the other thing is that everything is temporary. What we endure, everything is temporary. And no matter what it is, like the heartbreak of a breakup or
someone
an
dying,
injury,
even.
someone die. Well,
Yeah.
that's a little more permanent, but the situations.
Well,
in
I'm
our
not saying
life
that.
are
I'm just saying, like,
temporary.
when someone dies, then, like,
Right.
over time, it becomes less and less.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like one of my mentors, Kyle Cease, is a great guy. Always talks about, like, just using me as an example. I existed before I was a lawyer, and I existed
Yes.
after I was a
Yeah.
lawyer. But so many people, no matter what job it is, they take that as their identity, and they think that if they leave that identity, then they don't know who they are, and they're lost.
So
And-
what about you now? What is your identity? I mean, do you still, in your head, do you still see yourself as a lawyer? Do you see yourself as something different? What do you see, like, because at one point that was your, you know what I mean? Like you were saying, that was something that you had passion in, and then it got taken away.
And sometimes what you first think is what you're supposed to be isn't. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It leads you to something different. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, I thought I was going to be a sound engineer and turning my house and that. Now I'm acting and doing all that shit,
Yes.
And you know, you're doing a lawyer, now you're fucking inspiring people, public speaking. I mean, sometimes your path leads you in different directions that you don't think. And
Right. We don't think that goes back what I say earlier, that people think everything's permanent. Like,
Yeah.
I'm this now, I'm going to be this till I retire,
Yeah.
and that's it, right? That's my choice. And, I don't know, because I got asked this question a while back, like, what label would I put on myself?
Yeah.
And I kicked that around a lot, and I kind of refused to accept such a label. I kind of got to the point where I think, okay, like I came up with transformational entertainer, but I thought, well, that doesn't describe it all, because I write books, I speak, I do my one-man show. I like to just have a bunch of different projects
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
inspired to do whatever. Like right now, I'm working on my first work of legal fiction.
Nice.
Oh, cool.
And I was a big fan of Mickey Spillane, the hard-boiled
Yeah.
dime store novel,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of trying to get a modern twist on that. So that's kind
well,
of
it seems like now you're just being creative. I mean, and that's bringing you happiness. Were you always creative? I mean,
Well, I think lawyers probably don't get enough credit for creativity,
Oh, okay.
especially the criminal defense lawyers. But that's a tough question to answer, because I think as a child, I loved playing sports. I loved doing a bunch of different things, but I was always kind of, because I had those very practical oriented grandparents, that those weren't the kind of things that you pursued. You pursued those more tangible things. Like, I was
Yeah.
really good at math and science, and you prefer those more tangible things. So, I just, I like to just, what inspires me to be happy. Like, I'll do a YouTube video when I feel like it, kind of when I'm inspired to do it. I try to do them on a regular basis. I change, my show is different every time I do it, because I don't want to be out there doing, like, I don't know, name your favorite one-hit wonder out there doing the same, at Casino, Arizona or whatever, playing the song for the 1000th time and just doing it out of rote. I want to be inspired by everything I do.
Yeah. That's cool.
yeah. Did you when you were writing the book, did you think you might get disbarred while you were writing it?
No, I felt like I was working within the confines of the ethical guidelines, and I still do. There's something called Sword and Shield, and that is that basically a client can't attack someone and then not allow attack their attorney and not allow their attorney to defend themselves. And I think that's what I did. And she sued me, and there was a breach of fiduciary claim that was dismissed. So I don't think I did anything ethically wrong, but you know what? I'm thankful that the bar did, because that got me in a whole new direction.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you were one of the maybe the few, I don't know, but she was so manipulative that she couldn't manipulate you, so it became an anger thing.
Yeah,
like,
no
let's
shit.
I'm just want to fuck with this guy now.
Mhm.
I mean, is that what it felt like?
Well, I don't know that I would say that, because I'll tell you, a lot of people think that there is a personal relationship between the client and the attorney, and that's not ever how I practiced. I consider my job to be very similar to a surgeon, an emergency room surgeon, and the patient is unconscious. It's a little bit different than that, but you're there to do a job. Doesn't matter whether you like them, doesn't matter whether you support their political beliefs or whatever. You have an ethical duty, you have a responsibility. And in April of 2011, once that responsibility was cast on me, I think permanently, if you will, or until the case was over, that's what I did, and that was my job. And I, as a capital defense attorney, I tell the story on stage about how I remember a client being sentenced to death, and I remember the just horror that was in the classroom, the cries of the family, the lack of joy, the cries of the jury. And I talk about that feeling and that sentiment motivating me to not make sure that no one that was in my charge while I was a capital defense attorney was going to face a death penalty again. So in that regard, once the die was cast, it don't matter who it is. They weren't going to get the death penalty under my watch.
That's cool.
And, I felt like we did a great job.
Yeah.
I think so.
Definitely. 100%.
I think you just need to explain. Maybe you can just explain the difference to people of defending someone's rights and defending someone's conduct. I mean, I think people just get that confused.
Yeah, they do a
Actually,
lot.
if you don't mind, I'm just going to push your mic down.
Oh, no. Sure. Yeah, a lot of people get confused by that. One of the things that criminal defense attorneys will say amongst themselves is we defended the Constitution, not the conduct. It's not about their act. A criminal defense attorney does not have to believe that their client's story. A lot of people believe that, right? I mean, and there's this great book, I'm spacing on his name now, a marketing guy.
Jamie?
Talks.
We got a guy to look that shit up.
But what are you going to
No, wait, it's Robert Cialdini. He is a marketing professor at ASU, and he has a book called Persuasion. He's got 2 books out, the marketing book, and they talk about the idea of celebrity marketing, like endorsement, right? They hold up this water, this Sprouts water, and you say, oh my God, this person must love Sprouts water. They're doing a commercial for it, right? And they're advocating for it, and they believe that the person personally believes it. And when I read that kind of resonated with me in terms of areas. People saw me advocating for her, and they thus believed that I believe that because I was saying it on TV, right?
Yeah, that had to be hard.
But to further explain your question, yeah, and it was very difficult, especially given the choices she was making in that regard and the stain that cast upon me when we talk about the vitriol during the case. But that unless an attorney can disprove the client's story, then they have to share it. And still the client has the Sixth Amendment right to get up there and testify to whatever they want. It could be in a narrative format. There's lots of legal technicalities that come in there. But, yeah, you're basically, if you can't disprove it, and there's some things that are just absolutely not provable when there's no evidence, they're also not disprovable, if you will, right?
Yes.
And, a lot of people get on me and say, oh, my God, she's making all these accusations against the victim, and how could, you believe it? How can you let her do that, et cetera,
Well, she did it on her own, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's her story. And one thing that I remind people of is, do you think if the cops or the prosecutor had proof that she was telling a lie, that they wouldn't have shown that?
Yeah.
Right? That they wouldn't have confronted her with that in the interrogation or anything else? No. So they have an absolute right, the defendant has an absolute right to tell their story and have an attorney that tells their story. Now, that attorney doesn't have to believe it, right?
Yeah.
But they have to tell it.
Because she wanted to testify on her own, right?
Well, she did testify on her, but that's
but
also...
But if it was you wouldn't have wanted her to, right?
Well, I don't want to get into that because that's privileged, okay? But
I apologize.
Every client has the ultimate decision. The attorney in that situation is just giving advice.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, Keith, I don't think you should testify. I think you do. And you say, tough shit. I'm going to testify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you brought her up earlier. I got to bring her up again, and that's Nancy Grace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question, too.
She's a character, man. She's just brighter than the sun sometimes. How do you feel about Nancy Grace now?
I like her a lot. I've been on her show a few times. We actually were at an event called Crime Con together, which is the true crime version of Comic-Con, I guess is the way to say it.
No, that's cool, yeah.
And that was in Indianapolis, that first one. And no, she's very gracious, very, and what a lot of people probably don't understand is that she's had some tragedy in her life in terms of fiance being killed. And, she has her beliefs, and, she can put them forward and like everybody else. And that doesn't mean, and I might not always agree with her on everything, but to the extent I know her, I like her and respect her. She's always been very kind to me.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Do you know when the next 2 parts of the books come out?
That's the number one question I get, and my answer is I'm not prepared to make any announcements about that. I know, and I give the same boring answer. So
it's all good.
But yeah.
Well, maybe we could talk about your recent book that came out in January.
December.
Or was it December?
Well, I had a couple of books come out. I had a book come out called Defend Your Greatness.
Defend Your Greatness,
in December. And that's really based on my cancer journey. When I got done in February of 2016, I decided that I really wanted to encapsulate the lessons that I learned.
That's what Chris needs to do. I want you to do that with your lessons that you learned from your cancer, man. And even if you don't ever publish it, I think it's just probably very therapeutic to write all that stuff down.
It was, and I wrote a lot, and it took me 2 years to get it right, to share what I wanted to share with the world. And it is very therapeutic and cathartic. And, the same thing with Trapped with Miss Arias. It was therapeutic and cathartic just because what I said when I published that book was to impose truth upon her lies, the lies she told in the Troy Hayden interview that ran locally and was all over the world. And then she went on Good Morning America to make sure she could repeat those lies against me. So be that as it may, this was my catharsis as it related to cancer, but it started evolving into more than that because it wasn't just about cancer. Then it became about life and the way we all live our lives and making happiness the beacon. Because, one of the things I always bring into my show is childhood and where we were in childhood and before some of the judgments that others impose upon us and we impose upon ourselves.
We were free.
Right. And one of the questions I ask you, I remind the audience to think about what I call that single-digit era, right, where you're walking around and you saw someone and you wanted to connect with them or felt a connection to them. You might ask them that very simple question, do you want to play, right? And it was a fun question to get. Yeah. And you weren't worried about their shoes or their car or what they could do for you or anything. It was just that non-judgmental connection. Yep. And friendships to some degree are restricted by proximity, right? I mean, it's how far you can ride your bike at that age or who you go to school with. But those friendships still tend to endure 20, 30,
It's so
40,
funny you're talking about this. We were just talking about this. It's so awesome.
And then I asked the other question when I talk about that, when you got these playmates and you're going to school and everything else. The most glorious question in childhood, maybe you guys have reflected on this recently too, is what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Remember? And that was an awesome fucking question, wasn't it, right? You're
the
there
best.
And you just kind of, it was almost like a warm blanket. And one week it might have been astronaut, the next week it might have been nurse, right? But it was always felt good. And then what I asked my audience to do is say, okay, now get that feeling. Now how you feel about going to work Monday morning?
You forget about it.
And they go, ooh, boom. The energy just drops, right? And we get off the track. So I always, the other question that I put out there then in conjunction with that is you guys with the big frog on your deal might know the band Oingo Boingo, right? You know that band?
We're big Oingo Boingo fans.
Big Oingo Boingo fans. And it's funny, last time I did this, there was only one person that had even heard of Oingo Boingo.
Is it Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo?
Yeah.
I'm a huge Danny Elfman. I love Danny Elfman.
They have that question, who do you want to be today? Right? And it's whimsical in the song and that sort of thing, right? But it's also a great philosophical question for you now, because we've all committed the cardinal sin of growing up.
Yes.
So it's not what do you want to be when you grow up, it's who do you want to be today?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
And if you're not who you want to be today, can you make steps towards being who you want to be today?
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously there's some realism in there. You will probably not see me as an Olympic swimmer, in the next Olympics, but Might I be a professional speaker? Might I be an author? I do all these other things that I'm doing because that's what I want to be today.
Do you write this down? Is this something you write down or is in your head you think of?
What do you mean?
Well, for example, I kind of do something similar. Like I'm such a OCD. I write everything I'm going to do every day, my plans and stuff, but I'll actually write on the top, what good have you done today? And I try to do at least a couple of things, like even if the symbol is like saying, hey, to something so stranger or something.
Opening a door for somebody.
Yeah, or opening a door for somebody. And then at the end of the day, I ask myself, did I do anything good for today? And I try to at least have 2 or 3 things. But I like the B, you know what I mean? Because that can take you anywhere.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's why I say
like
having different projects, having some inspired action.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd ask you to consider either changing a word or making another list. Have you had fun today? Are you going to have fun today?
Yes. That's a big part for me because I think that we get so caught up in our worries that we forget to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just have something that we enjoy. It could start off small. So many of us, the depression and the mental health thing is just is big in our lives right now, and it should be. It needs to be. But one of the things that we need to have is we need to have some enjoyment, something that we look forward to doing, something that excites us. And when you have that, latch onto it and ride it, and it'll turn into other things, because your worries are people don't realize how bad mental stress can be. It seems like sometimes you only find out when something happens. I just got done going through, I took a 3-month sabbatical at work because I started having these horrible panic attacks out of nowhere. Never had a panic attack in my life, but my stress was just through the roof. And one of the things at the end of this sabbatical that I realized is that I'm the one. It's not my work that's causing it. That's in medical terms it is, but for the health insurance and all that stuff.
Right.
But in all honesty, it's how I'm thinking. Right.
It's your reaction.
Yes.
And the use of marijuana really helps with that.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
Well, that's what I want to get into. I want to talk about the cancer and how because I know that one of the things that Chris my brother dealt with, is the chemo can really mess with your depression, cause some major depression. It can cause that brain fog. It can cause
fuck your appetite
yeah,
up.
and it just sometimes, even if you beat cancer, it's very hard to get out of that state. Did you? My first question is, how did you get out of that? My second question is, did cannabis come into your life at all through the cancer?
Well, let's see.
That was us.
That was me.
Yeah,
Okay.
Don Rose farted.
Well, that's a big question. There's certainly different levels of what you're saying. I mean, in terms of depression, there was certainly a loneliness about going through cancer, because I knew that once I made the decision to go into the chair, as it were, and go through it, that it was my battle and my battle alone. And a lot of people that go through cancer will tell you that, how lonely they feel, right? No matter how much love and support is around them, they feel lonely. And that certainly can be difficult when you're going through it. But it was more that mindset of enjoying every day that kept me out of that depression, if you will. And just I was fortunate, I didn't really work during that time. I was writing the book. I was writing Trap with the Mysterious because I also had a cause. I wanted to make sure that I imposed truth upon our lies if cancer took me from the planet.
Yeah, damn right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I had a cause. I had a mission. I had that sort of thing going. So that might have helped with some of that. And when I came out, though, the goal was to build this happier life, to use happiness as my beacon. So I had kind of shifted in a way, because a lot of depression can be related to unhappiness of our current circumstances, right? And I'd kind of changed my circumstances.
Yes.
And then talking about coming out of chemo, I grew up in the Nancy Reagan Just Say No era, and I had those conservative grandparents, and so drugs were quote unquote bad, right? That was a big deal. And so I came out of chemo, and I did have the brain fog. I had RCHOP. Everybody's obviously different, but I had R-CHOP, and it was messing with my memory and that sort of thing, and it still does. That's
Wait,
why
what's R-CHOP?
That's the chemo
the
drug.
chemo cocktail,
Oh,
and it's got a long,
oh,
uncomplicated name, but
Yeah.
that's the type. So based on the type of cancer you have, the cocktail varies.
Yeah.
The exciting part of R-CHOP is you get to pee red. So you know.
Man, that
I
would
had that too.
Did ya? Oh,
that
okay.
would freak me out.
Yeah. Well, they warn you. They get the nurses really
God.
warn you because so you're not screaming when you see yellow coming out of your pee there. But so I had this you can't use drugs, right? And at this point in time, so this was 2016, and I remember wanted to reclaim my health, if you will. I'd gained 45 pounds through chemo. You think cancer is going to take weight off you, but between the steroids and the water weight and everything else, I had gained 45 pounds. And my oncologist said that's normal. That's what's going to happen. And so I'm going to the gym and I'm doing just like simple little curls with weights, and I can hear, just like popcorn in my joints. So back in 2016 when this was happening, CBD was still illegal. So I had to get a medical marijuana card just to get CBD, right?
Yeah.
And it felt so weird, like, oh my God, like I'm,
breaking the law.
ready for rehab or something, or I'm gonna go to wind up on Skid Row, and the dispensary is gonna be this horrible place.
That's why this stuff. That's the Reagan era.
Right there, right? Yeah. And so I got my medical marijuana card and started using CBD regularly.
Like oils or tinctures?
I used pills.
Pills.
Okay.
That's what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you know exactly how many milligrams you're getting, and that really started solving the joint pain right away.
That's
and this
amazing.
is after the chemo, right?
This is after the chemo, so I've been out of chemo. I'm starting to exercise now because I had a power port issue, so I couldn't exercise during chemo. And so I'm starting to, get my life back, I had this goal of the rock and roll half marathon was about a year to the day of my last chemo treatment. So my goal was to run the rock and roll half marathon. What's the rock and roll half marathon? The run they do in Tempe, the 13.1 mile. Yeah,
nice.
It's a running marathon. Yeah,
that's cool.
So I wanted to do that to commemorate a year out of the
that's
chemo
badass.
chair. And so I started using CBD for that, and since then I've been using that or cannabis regularly as a painkiller because I still have joint pain in my hips, and so I did the half marathon to commemorate the 1 year, and that was a real emotional.
That's freaking awesome.
That's badass, man.
Yeah. And so I did that. Thank you. And I still was having hip pain and stuff, so I'll use THC now.
Yeah. Did you find it help with anxiety at all, even after the chemo, when you're incorporating it into your life?
I think it probably has a lot of effects with PTSD in the subconscious. I never was diagnosed with PTSD, but I heard stories of that 1 in 5 cancer patients has PTSD, and also given what I went through with the Arias trial and my knowledge of the psychological DSM-4 made me think that a lot of those, the hypervigilance, like we talked about, people coming up to me in public, the mail I was getting, the extra patrols around my house because of threats and that sort of thing. So I mean, I think it helped a lot with that as well too. And I know obviously that cannabis has been very helpful to soldiers and things like that in dealing with their PTSD, that subconscious stuff. And I've been noticing lately, without going into detail, that I feel like a lot of stuff that was buried back has been leaving me now, subconsciously.
I steal this from Joe Rogan because it's just such a great saying, and Joe Rogan says about cannabis and psychedelics like psilocybin mushrooms and dimethyltryptamine that they're value-driven drugs or medicine, right? Yeah. With other drugs or medicines, they'll make you alcohol will make you angry. You become angry, or you become just aloof. Cocaine and methamphetamines, you kind of you pop off on the off your hinges. But with cannabis and psychoactives, you go within and you look at yourself, and a lot of the times you'll say, man, I was an asshole to this person.
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to change that. Or, man, I need to call my mom. I need to, something. I need to change
It
this
gives
in
you
my
like
life.
a good anxiety, I
Yes.
think. And the anxiety and when people say they get that it gives them anxiety,
You gotta
I think
ride
they just,
that.
I think they just don't know how to channel it. When
Yes.
you channel it right, you can.
People are afraid to ride that wave. You have
Yeah.
to ride that wave into some type of conclusion, and it creates that energy in you to go and fix things. We talk about the dimethyltryptamine a lot in this show because we truly believe that it can change not just lives but a complete paradigm shift in human evolution. I truly believe
that's
that.
mushrooms, right?
No, that's the Bufal Arias.
Yeah, the
This is
Bufal.
Sonoran Desert Toad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They're both psychedelic.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
There's the only there's a lot of differences, but the dimethyltryptamine is about 12 to 20 minutes, where
Short
mushrooms would be
duration.
about 6 to 8 hours or so.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
a lot shorter
Yeah.
duration.
Okay.
And that's going with the PTSD. I mean, the what they're doing with the MAPS project, and then with with the MDMA and the PTSD and the veterans.
John Hopkins or whatever just approved mushroom or psilocybin studies.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Look what they've
That's
done
insane.
since they've
never
approved medical or studies on cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, they found the CBD, they found the CBN, they
CBNs,
found
yeah.
the different terpenes, all these different things that are changing lives in such an amazing way that hopefully it'll change. And we say it, but this older generation has kind of
No, they just have to. The reefer madder generation just has to die off. I hate to say it, because they're never gonna change their minds. You know what I mean? Like my
Yeah.
aunt and uncle put marijuana in the same category as crack. So like if I told them
the
my
Reagan
cannabis
the
use-
Reagan, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just think about mom and dad thought about weed before I had cancer.
Yes,
they were totally against it, and now they embrace it.
Yes.
And so to go with what you're saying is I actually strongly believe that so my mom died of cancer in 2009, and he was on a regimen of 800 milligrams of THC and CBD or something like that
Yeah.
a day.
Yes. Rick
pills,
Simpson oil.
And I believe if my mom was on that same regimen, she would actually have survived. And the reason why is because she died from literally lack of potassium, because the chemo had just destroyed her body so bad. And at that time in 2008, when she had it, if I brought up cannabis, I mean, it would have been like, you want her to do heroin? What?
Right.
But I believe that if she actually would have incorporated it, she would have ate more, which would incorporate more nutrients and things. She would have slept more, which would have allowed her to heal and not be awake worrying. And then when she's awake, she might have gotten high off of it and laughed and had a good time a little bit. Like, I actually strongly believe cannabis would have saved my mom's life.
And
like,
the
I strongly
stress.
And that's what I'm saying, the stress and all that. So, and I believe Chris is a good example of a combination of the chemo and the cannabis. And how big was that tumor you got out of your, like 6 inches?
6
It was like a
inches, yeah.
fist.
Wow.
I also
Show him
had-
the scar, dude.
I also had 7 months of chemotherapy, very, very intense. So yeah, the chemo or the marijuana definitely helped. But yeah, I'll show him the scar.
You had to stay like 24 hours for that, huh? The
He
chemo?
would do 6 days on, 4 days off, right?
That's fucking
Yeah.
crazy, dude.
Wow. Yeah.
Goes all the way up to here.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I have a scar right here where they did a bone graft.
Oh.
So what happened?
Wow.
Yeah, we're super gross.
What happened with Chris is that one of the worst parts is when they finally took the tumor out after all the chemo, they had to do a cadaver bone, and and the cadaver bone didn't heal, and he snapped his femur twice in 3 months.
Watch episode 8 if the viewers viewers would like to know.
Yeah.
I think I got enough of a show today. So.
I do want to talk about his shoes. So this is something we brought up. Keith said, "Are those Chucks?"
I only wear Chucks, so
Yeah.
I was thrown off at first because it's tomato soup and shit.
Yeah, my Andy Warhol Chucks. Yeah.
So me and my brother, we are Campbell Soup kids.
Okay.
I forgot about that.
My grandfather worked for Campbell Soup for 30 years. My dad worked for Campbell Soup for 30 years.
Wow.
We grew up.
That's
if
even
there
funnier
was
you have
anything
those.
other than Campbell Soup in the house, you got kicked out. You know what I mean? Like
No Chef Boyardee. We were
Yeah.
because the Campbell Soup owned what was it, Brian? SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, SpaghettiOs.
Yeah.
We had tomato soup once a week with either egg salad or grilled cheese. I mean, we lived Campbell Soup.
Yeah.
Man. We the stuff on the walls. So it's pretty cool that.
Well, then I wore the right shoes
You
today.
did, man. There's that energy, man.
Is it more you're an Andy
Synchronicity,
Warhol
Brian.
guy or more that
Yes.
you're a Chuck guy? Do you wear-
I wouldn't say I have an adherence to anything. I just cool. Just,
Yeah.
like I'll wear some Vans, and if it was colder, you might see my Ninja Turtle Doc Martens.
Yeah.
But it's unintended today, so
yeah.
I wear those on stage. People love the Ninja Turtle Doc Martens. So.
Oh yeah.
We got to talk about your one man show. Let's talk about that. How's that?
Do you have any shows coming up?
I don't have any coming up for a while. I think I'm gonna.
I know you just did San Francisco.
I just did San Francisco last Saturday, and I'm gonna be making some changes to it, even though it's unscripted. I'm making some kind of changes to the format and everything, but we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm gonna probably be performing in off in Florida in January, and then it's up in Canada. So we'll see how it goes. I did the one show in July. It was late June back here at the Comedy Spot, and so who knows? This is kind of out there right now. My main focus is the writing on the legal fiction book.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Did you spend much time up at the Comedy Spot when you were getting the show together? And
No, I had just made a contact with the owner and set up a real good deal. And then when Danielle came out with cancer, it was like just a perfect thing to kind of segue with her. So one of my mentors, Sean Stevenson, had encouraged me, and I don't know if have heard of Sean or not.
it sounds
He was a world-renowned speaker, and he lived up in North Scottsdale.
Oh, is that the one you recently did a show with?
I did not. Well, back in 18, he came in July of 18. I did the Tempe Center for the Arts.
Yeah.
He grew up with a brittle bone disease and was about 3 feet tall.
I know what you're talking about.
And was an intern in the Clinton White House, got a PhD in clinical hypnosis, and was a big mentor of mine. And unfortunately, he passed away about a week ago. And so that show Saturday was a tough one for me to do, but I knew that he would want me to do it. But he had always encouraged me to do the one-man show, and so I'm keeping it going in his honor and just
cool.
having fun with it. And to some degree, every night it's something different, and depending on my mood. But the stories I tell, I talk about a lot of the things we've talked about here today. I use baseball hats to illustrate the kind of phases of my life, and just talk about that. And so people seem to really enjoy it.
How long is the show about?
It's about 90 minutes.
90 minutes. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's a good time. One time.
So it's a lot of fun. I haven't had to take a pee break yet, so I made it. So the 90 minutes, boy, oh boy, under the hot lights. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So
cool,
like
just
I say,
it's cool that you're just getting up there and doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. Just even get up on the stage.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Some people that
will never do that.
Yeah. They would be there's probably somebody sitting out there that could be the greatest comedian, stand-up comedian, or performer ever, and they just can't get over that.
I think about that because I play guitar. The best guitar player will never know. He's just like in his room and just never left.
Well,
Yeah.
I
He
think
doesn't have the ambition to just show the world.
well, some people might have the ambition, but they're just they
Mike,
can't
I'm
get
talking
over
to
that-
you.
Yeah. They can't get over that fear, like stepping over, like what Kirk did. He forced himself to like leave his law practice because he was like, I'm not going to be happy unless I do. And the way he did it, he forced himself to change and to be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some people just they have to make that last step to make that change.
Most people are just at that last step. You just got to make that.
Yes.
That
You gotta
jump.
nudge them.
one of the things about what I would call what you just said, just throwing your hat over the fence and then going to get it. It's what do you have to become? And this is one thing that my other mentor, Kyle Cease, is a big fan of saying, what do you have to become when you make that leap? Like, for example, if I go rent a theater and sell tickets in Tempe Center for the Arts, I have to become a professional speaker. I can't just talk about it, right? If I make an obligation to do a show somewhere, I'm now a performer. I've thrown my hat over the ring. I have to become a performer.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing a corporate speaking gig in a few weeks. I'm going to have to become a corporate speaker.
And sometimes you
In
just
a
have to
different
set
dress.
those things up just so you have to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just
Throw your hat over. Yeah.
Throw your hat over, and there's
That's
a lot
good.
of things, that scare people. But again, most of fear is a self-created illusion.
Yes.
I mean, it's an illusion
Yeah, I know shit.
of something bad is going to happen in the future based on your conduct. And, you know, you talk about my YouTube videos when I talk about a worry. What's the value of worry? Because even if the thing you're worrying about happens, you're not going to go, shit, I'm glad I worried about that, because then it happened.
Yep.
Right? You
Yeah, I
go,
love that,
I'm worried
yeah.
I'm going to get, a sunburn from being out here on the beach. Well, you can't stop yourself from that, right? By worrying about it. That's not a sun protectant, right?
Yeah.
So, throwing your hat over there, doing what makes you happy and inspired in that moment, and then following through on that. And then, so I have to become certain things that I didn't think that I would become. Because, I was thinking, I had this moment a week or so ago, and I was thinking, man, I remember back in, I was preparing for my show, and I was thinking about law school. I graduated law school in 2000, and I was in the back of the class, and there's no internet and all that stuff. So you're back of the class playing solitaire, that kind of thing, and hoping. Well, I was
the good old days.
I was running a Defender aid clinic. I was doing a lot of other stuff, and it was just kind of like, okay, I'm just trying to run through these classes, et cetera, et cetera.
Going through the motions in your third year of law school, and I thought to myself, 20 years later, I never would have felt like I was going to be in the place that I'm in now, right? Because I was always the most ethical lawyer and doing everything right and very dedicated to criminal defense work. And I thought, I wonder if I knew that the things that were going to happen if I would have just packed up my laptop and walked away. And the answer was no. And because there's so much joy in the uncertainty. And I hear people talk about, you talk about fear and things like that. There can be a lot of joy in that uncertainty. There can be a lot of adrenaline in that uncertainty, and everything's temporary and nothing, if you quote unquote fail, that's your judgment. That's not anybody else's judgment. So, you can go out there and embrace these projects, these things you want to do. And if you quote unquote fail, so what?
Yeah, that's a learning experience.
Right.
Actually, failing's good.
Failing's a good thing.
Yeah, failing's a good thing. Like Jocko.
Yeah.
You broke your leg, good. You crashed your car. You ever seen Jocko say all that shit? Good.
Yeah.
Big, but he's right, because usually when you get fucked on something better comes from it, or you learn something from it, or whatever.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
Right on. What other kind of things do you do, man, besides all the stuff we have talked about? Like, what do you like to do to hang out and chill? I mean, you said you're like what's your baseball team? Is it the Diamondbacks?
I don't follow baseball quite as much. I follow the Diamondbacks. I grew up in Seattle, the Mariners.
Nice.
I don't follow it quite as much now because I'm busy. I do a lot more reading these days. Like I said, the writing, the projects, and just hanging out and spending time with my wife. Obviously, summer months here don't lend to much else, but I'm looking forward to getting out and, walking and hiking and riding my bike and just doing that kind of stuff, just kind of connecting with nature as much as I can.
So as you're writing this book, do you have a schedule to write it? Like, do you I'm going to write a page a day, or is it just when inspiration strikes you?
It's when inspiration strikes.
Okay, cool.
I know a lot of people that talk to authors or train authors or what have you will say a page a day or an hour a day or something like that. And I just think that kind of discipline may be good for some people, but it doesn't work for me because I believe in the inspired action, and I'm just going to write garbage, right? Yeah. And so when I'm inspired to write, I will write. The downside of that is that inspiration can come when you don't want it to come, right?
Yeah. And then you forget sometimes. Do you keep anything on hand?
I keep my phone. Yeah.
Like your voice or something.
I'll do voice, or I'll tap in some. Even this morning, don't tell anybody, but I was in church this morning. Some inspiration hits. I'm like, oh shit. but that's what I do. Like, I'll make myself some little notes because that inspiration come to me. Like I said, I'm reworking the show, and so some ideas on how I could rework the show were coming to me, and I just gotta make it. Gotta take them. I remember when I started writing this legal fiction book. I was planning on doing it after this meditation retreat. I went to a meditation retreat in Silmar. That's another thing I'm really into. And
that's
something that we can talk about.
Yeah,
I think that's a good stress reliever. But I was at this meditation retreat at a Silmar, which is a gorgeous beach. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Shift Wayne Dyer?
No.
I don't
You
know.
should. It's on YouTube, so it's absolutely nothing, and it talks a lot about some of the things we've talked about today.
I listened to a lot of Wayne Dyer when I was going through the cancer. He helped put you in a positive mindset
Yeah.
a lot.
You might
cool.
want to check out The Shift because it's a full kind of feature movie with some interviews wound around with him. And anyway, I forget where I was going with
Was
that.
it meditation?
Meditation. Oh yeah, so the meditation retreat. Here I am at this meditation retreat, and I've got some friends I made there, and this book, this legal fiction book, the story just started coming to me, and I didn't have any technology because part of it was the digital detox. So I'm sitting there in this crowded, noisy lodge, writing my book.
You probably did a lot of writing there.
And I thought when I did, and when I got home, I
done.
thought this is gonna suck. This is gonna be garbage. And it's like, no, it didn't suck.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of do that now. It's like if I wake up, on a day and I say, man, I don't feel like writing, I'm not gonna force it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna force it because maybe my journey is to meditate that day. Maybe it's to go for a walk. Maybe it's to whatever. But to kind of force, and then that's not fun, right? Immediately you say, oh, I want to get this book done. And believe me, I fall in this habit all the time. I want to get this book done before Christmas, let's say. But that's only my deadline. That's the only stressor I put in my head. And then maybe I'm writing something that wouldn't be as good as if I just took a day off and rode my bike all around and didn't do a damn thing.
You may even got more inspired.
And then
from that.
the next day I write something better.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
say, the Defend Your Greatness took 2 years because there were 2 manuscripts. They just weren't right. I was kind of forcing it. And I went up to a cabin in Flagstaff and spent about 3 or 4 days there. And even then, it was great, but it kind of forced me to write, and I didn't like that. So now I just kind of write so I have my little composition book and a pen, and I'll write it. That'll be my first draft, and then when I type it, that's my second.
I need to start carrying something around with me, man, because I'll get these
You
flashes.
do in your phone, bro.
Yeah, you have your phone.
Yeah, but it seems like sometimes I just get too stoned and I forget to write it down.
Well,
My brother hates me for it.
you know,
I forget.
Hey, just wear that GoPro headband everywhere you go, and then just
And
watch
then
your
just-
life back.
Well, yeah, you could videotape yourself, right?
Get the Google glasses. Get the Google glasses.
I just need to get an implant.
You know what my buddy Sean says is if you can't remember it in the morning, that probably wasn't that good to begin with, right?
True
And that is true because I'll go to bed with some stuff in my head and go, no, I'm not going to write that shit down.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, if it's still there, then I know it's probably pretty good.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
that really is a good marker,
Yeah.
So if it's that good, you'll remember it in the morning.
Yeah.
Really quick, we only have a few minutes left, but
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the meditation retreat. Like, how long was that, and what kind of that entail?
This particular retreat is like 5 days, and it periodic meditations, group meditation, some lectures, some going to the beach. Because the Silmar, if you watch The Shift, is right on the ocean near Monterey, California. It's beautiful.
Nice.
But, I'm a big, since we're running out of time, I'm a big advocate of meditation.
Yeah.
Big advocate of meditation. I usually meditate at least an hour a day. I don't do it in what I would call a complicated manner. I just sit. And I just sit quietly. There's no chant. I don't do a guided meditation more often than not. I just sit and be quiet for an hour.
No breathing or anything either? Or?
No particular breathing exercises, nothing. Just quiet the mind. And because a lot of people say I can't meditate, I don't have, I can't sit in the yoga
that's
position and everything else. That's not really what it is to me. And I learned this from Kyle. I mentioned him like 3 times in this interview. It should be a paid endorsement. But but that's it. You can meditate because you can sit, and you can just sit by your quiet. And a lot of people, some people use guided meditations, and I've done a few of those, and those are cool. But to just sit and just with your thoughts, quiet, away from your phone, nothing else, about an hour, and that will really kind of bring some clarity, I think, to you, because the outside world's kind of locked out for an hour.
Yeah.
And it's your connection with yourself or source energy or whatever you want to call it.
I'm cool with source energy.
Yeah, to have that connection and to be able to get those things. And that's why, going back to what I said before about writing, I don't force it anymore because I know that source energy will give me what I need when the time is right. So if I need a day off or whatever, that's fine. So, but I connect and go from there. And
Well, while you're doing
for
the
inspiration.
meditation, are you killing the thoughts that come to mind or writing the thoughts?
No. And I'm a big fan of what Deepak Chopra says, that if you're talking about getting away with a thought, then that's another thought. Like if you're meditating and you're thinking, I need milk at the grocery store, and then you're going, well, fuck, I don't want to be thinking about how I need milk at the grocery store. I got to discard that thought.
And then
discarding the thought is a thought, right? So I love the idea of just letting it, okay, you're sitting there meditating and you go, I need milk at the grocery store or whatever it is. And you just, okay. And then you just let it float out there. And then, because if you realize too, everything's temporary, that thought is temporary too, right? So it's going to float off. Everything we kind of take a look at, you go, okay, I need milk at the grocery store, but I don't need to worry about that shit right now. I'm meditating for the next 59 minutes. And what happens, I think, after about 10, 15, 20 minutes, it depends obviously on everybody, that eventually the ego, the mind, realizes it's not going to win this battle and allows you to shut down after that 15 or 20 minutes. That's why like an hour. A lot of people advocate 15 minutes, which I think is great. It's better than nothing. But the problem becomes, I think it takes an hour to get that good 15 minutes because it takes a while for the brain to settle down and shut down. And then before long, you're not thinking, all the thoughts that come up just get dismissed, and you see the separation between yourself and the thoughts. Because the thoughts are really independent of you. You're going to exist before them. You're going to exist after them. You're just there, right? It's the whole, I don't know if you've read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. Just, you're there, you're now, that's it.
I read that during the cancer as well.
Yeah, see? And then you just have that, you realize that everything's transitory. They become less powerful. Like that need for milk
huge.
Doesn't have to be addressed right now. There's so much that just doesn't matter. Make that connection with yourself and move into that happier place. And then you're vibrating on that higher level. It's like we talked about earlier. You said, I'm going to try to do something good. I think if you're in a higher place, you're meditating, you're having fun, you're going to inherently do something good. Like I say, so that's why I said replace good with fun. Because if you're out having fun in the world, you're going to do those 2 or 3 things. Like you're going to open the door or you're going to do whatever.
I know.
Yeah, because you're having fun.
I do those things anyway, but I was just trying to make myself more conscious of it, I guess.
Right, but
you're right. I agree
raising
with
yourself
you.
to fun.
To another level.
Yeah, to another level. And
I like being, not fun, but like being. Like,
yeah,
because you can turn
being,
yourself into anything.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the I don't know if you've ever read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a powerful book.
I don't think so.
No?
I'm sure Chris
No.
Chris Lewis. Chris was like every time he's read it. This one he hadn't read it. But it's about his time in a Nazi concentration
I was about to say,
camp.
I know Viktor Frankl.
And there's a some words he says at the end of one of his section of his book, right when they were being released. And now I'm going to get it wrong. But it's, I'm here, I am life.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's something to that effect. And somebody's going to say, Nurmi got it wrong. And I probably did.
Jamie.
Jamie, we got Jamie.
But it's pretty close to
Viktor
that.
Frankl.
I'm looking up the end of his the last sentence of his book.
Well, it's a famous saying.
But it's just I am here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And I use that now because Eckhart Tolle says I am. You just are. You're just part of the universe. That's it. I always like to use the word I'm here because that, to me, that tethers me a little further to the now.
Yeah,
I think
right?
that extra word.
I think everything that you're saying is definitely something that I've gotten from.
Can I say what it is?
Yeah.
It is I am here. I am here. I am. I am life. I am eternal.
Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty
I am
sick.
eternal. So I was pretty close.
I think that's the psychedelics, the mushroom, the psilocybin mushrooms, and the DMT. That teaches you that.
We're good. Yeah.
Yeah, that teaches you that there is something, a greater thing, that source energy that you are part of, and you kind of. I think it's tapping into that source energy personally. I think that there's something you're tapping into.
Meditation's like a natural shroom trip.
Exactly.
Especially when you go super deep.
Yes.
And I think what my problem is because I've been trying to get into it too, and I just use that Headspace app, which only gives you 15 minutes. And I just realized 15 minutes ain't shit because right when I feel like I'm beginning the meditation, I'm rapping. You know what I
Right.
mean? And you're right. I need an hour. And because not only that, you're processing your thoughts. You're working out your day even probably a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
So, but anyway, my last question, just really quick, unless you have any more questions, is: have you ever tried a sensory deprivation tank?
I have not. I have not.
Yeah.
Have you heard? Do you know what they are?
I've done a float tank. Is
That's
that
same thing.
Okay.
Same
Okay.
thing. Yeah,
So yeah, and I wasn't as big a fan of that.
Oh, okay. I haven't yet done it. I've been meaning to try it. So I thought maybe a lot of people in meditation like to use those tanks.
Yeah, I did give that a shot. That didn't work for me. I'm sure it does work for a lot of people, but
You just got to go take 10 milligram edibles and it'll work.
or a mushroom cap.
Yeah, a mushroom.
well, I know
cap,
where this
yeah.
guy's head's at, but yeah, I just think about meditation and that connection. I think to me, psychedelics are really related, and cannabis is related to the subconscious. It's not related to the connection to source as much as it is. Maybe we could say that the subconscious interferes with our connection to source.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The egoic, the I have to do this, I have to write that. And one thing that is hard to do, if you think about it, is an interesting challenge to go without saying the word I. Like when I try to write a book, I try to eliminate the words I, because right after I comes a judgment or some kind of egoic manifestation, like I wrote this book, right? It's shorthand, but we're connected with that energy, and then it kind of flows through us instead of us forcing it, like with an hour a day or what have you. So I think meditation is our real heart space connection. And I know we're running short on time, but
Oh, you're good.
there's a Heart Math Institute that actually studies scientifically the intuitive powers of the heart. And their basic study...
I haven't heard this.
Yeah,
it's
wow.
interesting.
Their basic study was that they had a computer screen full of images. Some were pleasant, some were unpleasant. Like maybe a car wreck versus a puppy, something like that, right? And they had all kinds of electrodes and whatever hooked up to somebody that beyond my understanding, right? But before the image showed it, so they would go through the images in a random order. The heart could sense the pleasantness or unpleasantness of the next image before the eye could see it.
Wow.
Before the mind could process it.
Shit. That's
And you think about intuition and those sort of things.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's really where it comes from. The heart actually has those intellectual abilities. So it's not just our mental ability. I use the analogy I spoke a couple weeks ago, and one of the analogies I use is your heart is like a telephone to source energy. It gives you the direction, and it's where you can make that connection. And I think that's one thing that meditation allows you to do, because it silences the mind. It's like taking out the static and bringing the connection to your heart, so that can come through. So
fuck, man, you're motivating. I just started. You just motivate even more to get meditating going.
Yeah,
man.
I
That
recommend
sounds
at
so
least
awesome.
an hour a day, and without any judgment on what you're supposed to get out of or anything else, because a lot of people go, shit, this isn't working. I meditate an hour a day, this isn't working. No, you just aren't cognizant of the effects that it's having.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you start doing it, you will maybe get more inspired ideas that you don't know where they come from, that sort of thing, because you're getting that direction, or little bolts of things to do certain things at certain times that don't make a lot of sense to you at that time. When you follow those, sometimes you'll be very pleasantly surprised by the results.
Yeah. Right on, man. Did you have any more questions, McClay? Yourself?
No, I'm good, man.
Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
this is
Did
great.
you?
Should we give Chris a chance? He's
Yeah.
read almost every book I've read, and gone through cancer and everything. So, and showed me a scar.
Yeah.
I don't have near as cool a scar, Chris. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I don't think a lot of people do, so that's cool.
All right. We'll let you win that nefarious title, right? That dubious title, I should say.
No, he's a bad motherfucker.
Yes,
This
he
guy.
is. Yes, indeed.
I don't know if you want to take a couple of minutes just to promote anything, your channel, your books, or anything you want,
just
man.
come check me out on unchainedlives.com. It's got I don't have the Arias book there. That's on Amazon, but it's got my other books. I did a care guide for lawyers that came out in January, because I wanted lawyers to to help with their stress, because it's a very stressful profession, and there's been a lot of lawyer suicides lately that have been kind of made prominent in the Washington Post and some other places. So I put kind of my self-help stuff on unchainedlives.com, and if people want me for speaking gigs, they can contact me through unchainedlives.com, and we can work out to speak, to come hopefully motivate your employees or your staff or cancer organization, whatever it is. I do a lot of different types of speaking because I've journeyed through so much, and I'm so thrilled to be here and share it. And I appreciate you guys having me.
Oh no, man! Man, I am so appreciative of you taking the time to come out and talk to us, man.
When the new book is finished and you're doing that, you got to come back on the show.
Oh, that'd be awesome, man.
Yeah.
And not even when the new book comes on, man. Even if you're just bored on a Sunday, you want to bullshit, just hit us up, man. I had a great time, and you've inspired me and motivated me just to get things going even more in my own life. So I really, really appreciate your time, man.
Well, I appreciate you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Do you want to do some shout outs real quick?
Yeah, we're gonna do some shout outs real quick. I want to give a big shout out to Bird City Comics, local group here in Phoenix. Check them out on Facebook. That's facebook.com/birdcitycomics. Anthony and Laura and Tim, very cool group of people. I actually went on their show last Thursday, and they do a live show on Facebook where they sell comic books. They have fun doing it. They have fun games for the people that are buying the books, and I actually sold some really nice comics and had a good time. And
that's a weekly thing you're doing now, right?
Well, they do that a couple times every week, so big shout out to them for that, and I appreciate it. We're going to start doing it more often, so please follow them on Facebook, Bird City Comics. Also check out Absolute Geek and the Absolute Geek podcast. That's Friday night at 7:30 Arizona time, and check out CBSI Presents Tales from the Flip Side. That's my speculation and comic book and action figures and sports cards and all that stuff. And we're having a fun time with that. We're doing the top 10 comic books and speculation on the secondary market every week now, and it's a fun time, and just we enjoy ourselves. And make sure you like and subscribe to the Bogcast, and let us know and tell us what you think of the show, and if you got anybody out there that you want to see on the show, let us know, and we'll try to get them on.
Oh yeah, and also Mike Martin.
Big shout out to Mike Martin and his podcast.
I told him that you'll be on his podcast, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm going to be on Mike's podcast. I've already talked about him. We're just setting up the dates. We're going to have a fun conversation. We're going to talk comics. So
awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot again, Chris, for helping out on sound, Don Rizzi on camera, and to our guest, Kirk Nurmi. I really appreciate it. That's a wrap on the Bogcast, episode 41. Hell yeah. Let's turn this up.
Bang!